An attempted evacuation from Mariupol was largely unsuccessful yesterday. Ukrainian troops are still holding out there, but have warned the city could fall very soon. There are still some civilians trapped as well. James Cowan is chief executive of the demining charity, the Halo Trust, which has workers in Mariupol. He joins us now live from Kyiv. Good morning to you, James.
Good morning.
What can you tell us about your colleagues who are and were in Mariupol?
So the Halo Trust, we've been working in Ukraine since 2016. We have 430 staff in the country in total. 21 of them were in Mariupol. Many have now got out, but we still have a number who are present there in the city. We have lost contact with them. It's extremely difficult to know what is happening to them. We're obviously very concerned for their welfare, but it is extremely difficult to communicate into the city at the moment.
Give us your insights. I know you're not there, but you've had people in there of what is happening in Mariupol, because we've been reporting on it for so long. I wonder if we've become slightly desensitized. Is it desensitized to it? What is your understanding of the Russian approach to Mariupol? Is it a question of literally trying to raise a city to the ground?
Well, I think what the Russians want to do is secure Mariupol before they can make their decisive move in the Donbass. They need the southern port in order to be able to secure the southern flank of their major assault onto Kramatorsk and surrounding cities. So the Ukrainian defense is both extremely gallant and surprisingly prolonged. The fact they've been able to hold out in the industrial area of the city, extremely difficult to capture it, and the very gallant defense put up by Ukrainian Marines is incredibly impressive. And for now, at least, they can last there for as long as they have ammunition and food. Now, how long that is, I think, remains to be seen. And I think it's amazing that they have lasted as long as they have. But for each day that it continues, so those Russian battle groups will not be able to intervene in the Donbass.
And is there anything that anyone can do to support that? Because presumably it's quite, and there'll be a huge reluctance of Western allies to give direct drops into Mariupol. They haven't done that so far, either in terms of ammunition or food. Is that something you'd be calling for? Is there something the West should be doing that focuses in on Mariupol?
I think what the priority is humanitarian. There are estimates as many as 100,000 of the original 300,000 people are still present in the city. Many of them are extremely vulnerable elderly people. They have very limited access to food and water and medicine. And so the more days in which there is a humanitarian corridor to allow escapes, the better. But I don't think there's very much more that the international community can do other than to negotiate with the Russians for such a humanitarian corridor.
What do you fear that we will see if Mariupol gets opened up to scrutiny? Do you fear that there's 100,000 people? We've heard stories of people starving to death, children starving to death or dying of thirst. Do you worry that there could be tens of thousands of people who are not going to get out of Mariupol?
I think it's extremely likely that the casualty figures are very, very high. This is a city that is surrounded. It is not the same as Aleppo, where populations could actually leave. They have been trapped in there now for many weeks, and I think we should fear the worst.
Your colleagues who have come out of Mariupol, have you had a chance to speak to them? What were their stories of their experience there?
I've spoken to a couple. It's pretty horrifying what's been happening. They are traumatized by it. But I think what is remarkable about the Ukrainian people is their morale. They are incredibly positive about their future. They're absolutely convinced that they're going to succeed, that they will survive as a country. It really is very uplifting to talk to them.
Do you think they're right?
Yeah, I think they are right. I think with the right support, they can get through this. And I'm here now in Kyiv. I drove into Kyiv yesterday, and you pass through, it's a huge country, Ukraine, and very large parts of it are unaffected by the war. And then you approach Kyiv and you see burnt out tanks, destroyed buildings, fragmented trees in forestry from shrapnel burst, and you realize the war's been happening. And you see just the incredibly impressive defense that the Ukrainian military have put up. And then you come into the city itself, and it's like a ghost town. It's like London in the middle of lockdown. There's nobody about, but the city is intact. They have won the Battle of Kyiv, and they can win again. This is a country that knows how to succeed and to survive.
Your day job, you're running this charity that's engaged in demining. We've heard reports of deminers being killed in eastern Ukraine. What is the risk? What is the scale of the danger of mines? What are the Russians doing with landmines, and what threat does that pose?
So we went to visit the State Emergency Service yesterday and the army. And this morning I'm going out to visit Bucha, where so much of the violence has been witnessed on television. The Ukrainians estimate that 300,000 square kilometres of their country is affected by unexploded ordnance, either landmines, rocketry, bombs, artillery munitions of one sort or another. That's a truly phenomenal amount. And much of it is in urban areas. So there is a vast scale of problem to deal with. They are bravely trying to tackle it. They freely admit to the fact they don't necessarily have the right skills. And I know that my organisation, which is the world's largest mine clearance organisation, can help. So we're going to scale up here from our programme. We have the advantage of an established programme anyway from pre-February. We're going to grow the programme and raise as much money as we can. I'm very pleased to be in direct contact with the British government, with the Foreign Secretary, and the British are intending to support us. I'm flying to America next week. Other European countries are getting behind us, and I'm confident that we can, with the public support and with public contributions, raise the money to clear this country. Because if we don't, this is a country that will starve. The crop needs to go in the ground. People need to return to their homes. Factories need to reopen. And unless the fields, the houses, and the factories are made safe, none of these things will happen.
And are the Russians putting these landmines in place for what purpose? Is it for the purpose of terror? Is it for the purpose of grinding the country into submission? Is it designed that they're left there for people to wander into? What's the purpose of them?
Well, landmines are a fundamentally defensive weapon. So in many areas, the Russians, particularly around Kyiv, have been on the defensive, and indeed they're using it as a delaying tactic. So they have left booby traps in children's toys. They've placed hand grenades underneath landmines so that when an unsuspecting Ukrainian soldier lifts the landmine to move it to safety, it detonates because the pin comes off the hand grenade. And accidents are happening for simple reasons like that. So there's a vast amount of this ordnance out there. The Russians are, I'm afraid, extremely adept at booby trapping and creating as many casualties in their wake as they leave the north. So it's that sort of problem that we've got to deal with. And then in the east, it's a very different problem of fixed lines, of trench systems, of minefields on a really kind of First World War basis. So that will be the problem once the battle in the Donbass is concluded. In the south, it's very much focused on the big cities such as Mariupol, which will need an extraordinary level of clearance if they're ever to be habitable again.
Just finally then, what could people do? Listening to this, people will be saying, you're doing incredible work. It's very brave work, what you're doing. It's hugely necessary work that you're doing. The government can help you. Governments around the world can help you. What can people listening do to help you, James?
Well, we need to raise money, and we're not one of the Disaster Emergency Committee charities. We're not part of that group. We're not allowed to be. And so we don't get to benefit from any of the DEC appeal money. And I know the public have been very generous to that. But there are other important work that needs to be done. And I think that the clearance of landmines, the clearance of all of this artillery ammunition needs to happen, because otherwise none of those NGOs can actually do their job. They can't use roads, they can't reach people, they can't deliver food or medicine. So I would really encourage the British people to get behind our work. We're a British charity. We do courageous stuff in many parts of the world, and we would hugely value the British public's generous support.
And they can just go to the Halo Trust website and find a way of donating there.
That's right. Thank you. Yes.
Exactly. Well, people listening to that who want to help, please do that. James, great to speak to you. Look after yourself. I hope to speak to you again soon.